Okay, let me know when we're recording. Whoa.
It's not me.
We are recording.
We're recording, great, thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to our meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. We're gonna start our meeting like always with a review of our business meeting for tonight. Tonight, we will start with the pledge. We have our city council reports this evening, which we look forward to, which is a 3-minute period for all of our council to report on what they've been doing, some of the activities they're working on. Citizen comment period, and then we will move to 2 separate public comment periods. The first one will be item 5.1, the Danish Oaks Drive rezone. Mike, you talked about that last week. Why don't you give a little bit of background again, and then we'll probably have you do it even again.
Sure.
Before we go to public comment.
Yep.
In the business meeting.
Yep, I'll give the quicker version here quick. You'll remember this is kind of a cleanup type of rezone in between the Danish Pine subdivision and the Watson Hollow subdivision between Creek Road and Bengal Boulevard. That's 2 different subdivision projects. There was a single parcel that's shown on the screen here that was not part of either of those projects. So it's kind of it's just a little island parcel in the middle that was never entitled, not part of a subdivision plat. And now there's an owner that owns the 3 parcels that are starred on the screen that is interested in consolidating those 3 and building 1 single home at the end of the cul-de-sac to the north. But to do that, before they consolidate the lots, we want the zoning to be the same on all 3 of them. So they're proposing to go from RR 121, which is a half-acre zoning, which is the old zoning of the area, and rezone that to be consistent with what the rest of the developed area is, which is R 110. That's the really quick version. Are there any questions on that?
I think we had a good discussion in the last meeting. So
Yeah, it complies with the general plan, so there's no change to the general plan needed. It seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. Great. So that will be the first public comment period. I'm going to come back to this item on our action items, but then we'll have a second public comment period, which is the sports court proposed ordinance that we've been working on.
Yep.
So Mike, why don't you take it again?
Yeah, I'll give the full presentation in the business meeting to kind of cue this up. But as a reminder, where this ended was the Planning Commission has been deliberating on this for a number of meetings. They took the existing draft and made some substantial changes to it. And as the email correspondence over the weekend clarified, we just got the minutes back from those meetings. So we're working on creating that formalized updated draft. That should be ready by like a week from tonight. There's no action scheduled on this tonight. So we'll introduce this for public comment based on basically these bullet points here, where rather than regulate sport courts by use, we are regulating what we've termed outdoor non-building structures over 500 square feet. So everything that fits that criteria is regulated the same. Require a building permit for those structures, have the applicant sign an affidavit that gets recorded against the property, which basically acknowledges, hey, you know, depending on how you use this, if there is a noise concern generated, that is subject to enforcement. We're trying to make people aware of that before they build the court, so it doesn't become a contentious enforcement issue. We've eliminated the previous recommendation to require a noise study before building one of these structures. And then we propose to maintain the same minimum setbacks as accessory buildings do today, which is depending on your zone between 3 and 5 feet away from property lines. Lighting and fencing are regulated as they are in the code today. We felt like both of those are in a pretty good place without needing more regulation. And then the commission also recommended adding specifically to the nuisance ordinance, spelling out what a noise violation is and that is subject to nuisance enforcement. The public comment that was submitted actually brought up some good points on how we calibrate that language. So we'll be taking that into account and reviewing that as we draft the ordinance. Of how we include the county's ordinance by reference and, you know, exactly what that looks like. So we'll present this for public hearing tonight. The draft will be ready next week, and then it will just be scheduled at one of the upcoming meetings. The moratorium is good through, I think, mid-March, so we're still on track to have something in place by the time that is up.
And can we make our noise ordinance more strict than the county because of the issues that were raised by Dan Egan?
That's a good question. Right now, we do that all by reference to the county health code. I suppose we could. That would probably take some additional research on, you know, creating our own noise standards and figuring out how we enforce that, because all other noise issues right now are just regulated by reference to that county noise ordinance. But the public comment cites some of the details in that noise ordinance. I think without creating our own standards, we can clarify exactly what part of the county noise ordinance applies and,
Okay.
you know, maybe make that a little more clear without needing to completely reinvent our regulations.
Okay. I don't know if you had a chance to read what Dan Egan sent. It was very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Really.
I did it.
And can we get it done with the moratoriums, what, March 23rd?
It's, yeah, mid-March, it's in there somewhere.
But where we have an ordinance pending as well, that date or having it close to that date, it's not critical that it's done right then. I think it would be fine.
Okay,
But it
because
would
we
be
do
good.
have some permits that are outstanding.
We don't have any in the queue right now.
I thought you told me that there were some that actually were part of a larger project that had been submitted.
So we had seen some on, sometimes homes will submit landscaping plans. And they're getting a permit for a retaining wall and they submit their whole landscape plan and it'll show stuff.
Okay,
We exclude that from the permit. I don't know if that means they're gonna come back, but that's pretty typical to see things on a landscaping plan that they're not actually trying to build.
Okay, well. Okay, anything else, Mike? Anything else from the council?
Not for me.
Okay,
We'll make sure we clarify that it'll be available for review. Council consideration on this, so
okay.
make sure that that's clear.
Okay, then we only have one legislative action for this evening. And that will be consideration of what we just talked about, the 5.1 Danish Oaks Drive rezone. So what I will do this evening is we'll have our public comment on it. And then I will entertain a motion for consideration of ordinance 410A, which is the approving the rezone. After I read through that, I'll say, or consideration of the ordinance 410D denying the rezone. And so we'll wait for a motion and then move from there, however that happens. Okay, any questions with that? Okay, great. And then we'll approve our consent calendar, which was the meetings from February 6th. Okay. So we have 5 staff reports to begin our meeting with. The first being item 3A, which is our March meeting dates. And so this is on here for a couple of reasons, but both of our normally scheduled meetings in March have a couple of conflicts. The first one is on Tuesday, March 5th. It's actually the Republican and Democrat caucus meetings. So those meetings are when delegates are chosen. And so we have interested people obviously on the council and that want to be at those meetings. And so let's talk about that meeting first as a council. So we've got a couple of options. Did you want to go through them, Tim?
Well,
Or
yeah, go ahead.
so we talked about we could there's multiple options. We could move the meeting to Monday. I thought about initially moving it to Wednesday, but there's a planning commission meeting. Mike messed up, so we can't do that. But, so we could move the meeting to Monday. The other option would just to be to hold a shorter meeting. So we start a work session from 4 to 5 and we do a business meeting from 5 to 6. Both caucuses start at 7, which would give us enough time to get to those caucuses. So, thoughts on that?
Good with Monday,
You're good with what?
Monday.
Monday?
One of the things, and you suggested we could limit, or define in the public notices, the amount of time that we're gonna have for public comment. So it would be an abbreviated meeting as well.
The reason I like that idea, although I, like Councilman Newell, could do Monday. I think the least disruptive we are to the public who has it in their mind and calendar, you know, the first and third Tuesday. So I would favor an abbreviated Tuesday meeting starting at the same time it normally does.
Okay. Councilor Harlan, how do you feel?
Well, check-in begins at 6, even though the meeting starts at 7. So I'm okay with abbreviated meetings as long as, I mean, we could have another public hearing once the ordinance comes out. No, so what, can we do an abbreviated meeting? Are there too many items?
So, yeah, we can. I mean, and like Tim mentioned, one of the things that could disrupt that is if we have 20 people come. But we can state that we're only gonna do 15 minutes of
Oh.
max of citizen comment period. And so I think we could keep the meeting honestly less than an hour.
Okay,
And if I may add that we, from my looking at what we have scheduled that night, there are no public comment items. And then we do have some contracts to approve for some of our road projects. Those are the critical things. So there's no designated public comment. There's a citizen input time. And I mean, we could even look at starting at 4, and we wanted to have a work session that went till 4:45 and then started right at 5 and be done by, 5:30, 5:45. We could do that fairly easily, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Councilmember Burrell's, thought too, though, is, anyway. keep,
I
you know,
like the continuity of
Yeah.
keeping it on a Tuesday, if that works for the council members.
Is that okay with you, Councilmember Noel?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we would keep it on Tuesday and do an abbreviated meeting,
Work with this one.
work and business session. That work? Okay, and so the second meeting is March 19th or 20th?
Ninth.
We're scheduled for the 19th, Tuesday, the 19th. And this is specific to me. I will not be available for that meeting. So the thought process was to move it possibly, the only thing we could really do is the 26th, or we could have Councilmember Newell be act as the mayor pro tem. So maybe with the continuity that we talked about, maybe anyway, what are your guys'
Are
thoughts?
we voting on something tonight? Did we get this ordinance done? We need 5.
Well,
Possibly,
no, you just need a quorum.
You just
you need a quorum, but
Three.
you could have a 2-2 tie. That is the one.
The moratorium was a 3-2, that's what the brain went. Maybe.
I mean, again, I think it's best for the public to tune into this. I think it's, despite our best efforts to put on the website, et cetera, I think, I don't know. I would lean to having our mayor pro tempore lead the meeting, unless there are critical items, mayor, that you, if we're forecasting, items, does it sound like there's some that the mayor, would be
Well, the 2 items that we have that are coming down the pipe, but it's all dependent upon when the council wants to put those in. Mayor, you want to put that on the agenda. I mean, the CWH annexation is one. The sports court is the other. Those are the 2 kind of, we do have some zoning modifications, but I think they can be delayed. So those are the big things. If you want to delay them into April, that's just about a week or 2 weeks later. We can do that if we want and just still hold the meeting at the time, that same time, but it's up to what you want to do. We're not bound by time on those 2 ordinances is the point, with the exception of the moratorium, but I still feel a week or 2 after the moratorium, still, there's a pending ordinance in play And it would be something that could work.
Is there anything that would stop us from voting on the that we're not calling it a sports court, what are we calling it, Mike?
That's what it's called,
Okay.
still, but yeah,
On the
just
fifth,
sounds better.
We can do that if the council wants to do that. We'll have, by next Tuesday, we'll have the ordinance. People can provide input on it.
then
Will the
we're,
building permit be a different ordinance than the noise clarification? And let me tell you why I think that's important. My neighborhood is a microcosm, right, of this controversy. There are 3 people, one of them who wants to put in 2 courts on her property,
Mhm.
who will pounce.
Mhm.
If the moratorium expires, and they'll get contracts and say, nope, I did it before the moratorium expires. So if we could at least get the building permit part done on March 5th. And if you want to wait, because the noise ordinance is really important,
Mhm.
how we enforce that and how we approach it. If we separate them, then I think we can do the one in April and the other March 5th. That's just my thought.
so the noise one, so I'm a little confused.
Yeah, that could work because the noise. Specifying noise as a potential nuisance is a different title of the code than. The permitting and the structure definitions, that's in the zoning chapter, and then the nuisance is like Title IX, it's like health and safety, so I think feasibly we could do that. The zoning. Standards that we're proposing are fairly straightforward, in terms of just getting that language in there, requiring a building permit and the affidavit and things like that. Feasibly, yes, we could separate those if the council wanted to do that.
I'm great with it. That if we got it done on the 5th, that would
I would
alleviate any
really like
concerns
to
of.
see that permitting be done before the moratorium expires. That's.
Well, in my comment, I don't disagree with anything. I support everything that has just been said. Regarding Tavachi, it'll be interesting to see how the deliberation goes tonight and what questions have been answered, what remain to be answered. This is an absolutely huge issue to many of my constituents in District 4. And so I want to make sure we've really dotted every I, crossed every T, done all of our due diligence. And so postponing that vote on whether to annex Tavachi to later in March or even frankly later, in April or May, to make sure that we really are not entering into anything or taking a vote, without really thorough sense of our due diligence. So that would be my input related to Tavachi.
What I remember from Shane is that there's no timeline specifically on Tavachi.
Tavachi, we don't have.
To be reasonable, I think,
Then
is that
I
correct?
think that sounds great. Waiting till April, early May.
Okay,
So keep
well, so then what we will plan on is keeping the meeting, and you're okay, Councilor Arnold, to do the mayor pro tem, okay?
Maiden voyage.
Okay. Well, that sounds good, so we got that
Yep,
clarity,
we're good.
okay, let's move forward with that then, okay. Item B is, under staff reports is, parade start time. If you read through the discussion that we need to have is, moving the parade earlier in the day when it's not so hot. So come on up, and we've got our culture manager here who, deals specifically with that, and Etchell. And so the narrative is we've started that at 11, is that right, Ann? That's
Yeah, in the past, we've always done it.
always done at
11
11 AM.
For 3 years now.
So yeah, why don't you give some back, did you want to give any background on it? or
No, I
just
mean,
Ann?
we even did it in the afternoon about 6 years ago, right? And then
Yeah.
11 o'clock last year was kind of a tough thing because it was so hot and people, that was an issue. We do have issues we want to discuss with the police and staffing as well, because that's something that we need to consider, and let Ann kind of explain what the Butlerville Days Committee deliberated on.
Great.
Okay, so as you just said that I met with the Butlerville Days on January 17th. We discussed this on our wrap-up meeting last year. That there was concerns on the parade, so we had another meeting to kind of go over it again on how we should proceed this year. The biggest concerns that I received personally and the committee it was too hot for the participants And the spectators, I noticed that we had, if it was just the heat or not, there was a decline on people along the parade route. But I did get a few phone calls, from people, asking why.
Asking why.
Why 11 a.m.?
Yeah.
Why not earlier? So I took it back to the committee and we just kind of discussed it. Starting at 9, pros on that from the committee was 9 a.m. cooler temperatures, less traffic. They felt there would be less traffic. Heat fatigue is a safety issue for participants and spectators. And then also they just felt that residents would come back doing a morning thing, go home for a while, then come back later, and not just do a kind of a midday and then maybe not come back because they're just too hot and tired. Cons were one of them said, I don't think teenagers will like 11 a.m. or will like 9 a.m. but will prefer 11 a.m. And then originally we did 11 a.m. we had it at 3, we went to 11, thinking that people would just come straight into the park right after the parade and start at 12. It didn't go over very well. The biggest problem we have is we're adding 2 more hours in the day for police officers to be there. With the police department, it's already a big day for them, and it does add more time for them. It will also ask UFA to come a couple more hours to participate and be there. So with that being said, the committee all formally voted to ask to go to 9 instead of 11. Councilmember Highland is a part of our liaison, and she was there and listened to some of the things that I had mentioned.
Any thoughts you want to add, Sue? No?
Well, I think from your presentation, it comes down to our police and fire and what that does to your departments.
Well, that take, when I had 1,500 people, it was easier to do these things. When you have 40, it's a little different. So it takes every resource and everybody we have to staff the parade route and to staff Butlerville days. And that's fine. We'll do whatever you choose. Keep in mind that, and it's not so different with fire. When you do it at 11, I have to have them here at 10, and then they're here all day. And although it closes, we're here till midnight anyway, cleaning up the park and maintaining it. So those are very, very long days, and we're adding a couple hours. If you start at 9, I've got to have them here at 8. So they'll work till 8 in the morning until midnight. Again, it's fine. I can bring them out, staff the parade, but I will have to send half of them home to sleep for a few hours and then have them come back and let others go home. So we'll have a reduced staffing, and then there'll be an additional cost. So as someone once said, only fear and money holding you back. So with that in mind, just tell us what you want. We'll make it happen. And we just move things around and
Keep program, what do you think?
I think just due to our staffing model being a little different, we can absorb the hours a little bit easier than PD can, but we will have to bring in some of our normal day staff a little bit earlier, but it will far smaller quantity people, so we can probably make it work with especially plenty of planning, so.
Well, great, interesting, council. So Chief, so you feel like you feel like we could make it work. It'll be a little bit of a strain, but you feel like, if we did if we did it for a year and tested it out, and maybe if it ends up being too much, maybe we look at it again, or what would you think about that?
I think that the reasons for doing it are sound. I mean, I was here when we were starting it at like 4 in the afternoon, then 2 in the afternoon, and then we move it to 11. And each time we move it back, it's actually better. I like it better.
Yeah.
And parade should be in the morning, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's just when you do them. As cooler, those are all fair arguments, so we will work around whatever you'd like done. I'll just bring them all out. And we'll stop that, we'll make it safe, we'll run the parade route. I'll just have to send them home. Now you will see reduced presence on that particular, it runs for more than one day, obviously, so. But on that particular day, you will see reduced presence in the evening hours, because I can't ask them to work.
Yeah.
So,
That makes sense. So, council, anything you want to add?
With earlier time, I think.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it, yes.
Okay. Well, let's leave it, let's move it, let's move to 9. And Chief, if you'll just do a real thorough analysis of how it affects your group, and if it's really adverse, let's look at it again after this year, but if that's okay.
Let them eat cake. No, they'll be, take care.
Okay, great. Okay,
All right,
thank you,
thank you.
thank you.
Oh, and then, there's 156 days before Butlerville Days. Just so you know, I counted down.
Thank you, now it's on my radar.
And it's on mine all the time now. I still am looking for a parade chair or a co-chair, so 2 people can tackle it. So if you know anyone in your community neighborhood or just send them my way, I'll interview them and see. But our chair last year did it for a few years and she needed to walk away. So if you know of anyone that's interested, just let me know.
Okay.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Dan. All right. Item C under staff reports is labeled the Metro Water Project. So you all probably are aware, we're gonna have a major construction project started soon to repair and replace water lines running through our city for Salt Lake Metro Water. So Matt Ship is here to tell us all about it, right, Matt? And give us some background
And I
let
brought
us
my
know.
backup right here, the two that know everything that's
Say the
happening.
mic.
Just real quick, excuse me, you recall a few councils ago, Metro came in and gave a presentation on the work that they're going to be doing. They bid that project out, and what the project is, they're installing a 36-inch water line from the treatment plant up Big Cottonwood down to I wish I'd have remembered the name of the road, down to where their aqueduct intersects with Fort Union. So there's a 36-inch line going in on Fort Union. There's also the big aqueduct, which is a 72-inch line that runs from Fort Union down to their treatment plant, the Metro treatment plant off of Danish Road. So it'll be going behind homes, in front of homes, down our streets. All of those things will be happening. So Metro is in charge of this project. They are putting together all the agreements and all the easements with the residents that they will be affecting. So all those things are happening. You'll also recall a little while ago when Metro first introduced this to the city, staff came to the council and asked for funding to design our Fort Union storm drain line, because this had big impacts on interfering with our future of our storm drain line. We went through that process with Metro. We have our storm drain line designed. Subsequently, since then, I've shelved that project because we have some other very big storm drain projects that you're going to be seeing here in the next couple of weeks for agreements coming down the pipe. No pun there, but they'll be happening that we need those funds for more urgent than we do for the Fort Union. But the good thing about the Fort Union, we have our design. They've moved their pipe around to meet our design. So in the future, when we build that, we're all set and ready to go. Now, there's a few things happening right now. Metropolitan on this big pipeline will be going through sensitive lands. So as per our ordinance, they're going through a variance process on the sensitive lands because they're not allowed to build across earthquake faults and things of that nature. And they cross one or two of those building the project. So exactly where they are in the process, Mike, if you want to.
Yeah, the variance hearing is in 2 weeks on March 7th. There's like 5 different variances that they're requesting. Mainly due to the regional large nature of this pipe. Our ordinance is written to apply really well on property by property developments. There are very few water pipelines as large as this, so we've reviewed the engineering and the technical design of the pipeline and think the engineering is generally sound. It just needs to go through this variance process because of those provisions in our sensitive lands.
So that's happening in conjunction with this. There is also an agreement that we have been working with Metro on for work within the right of way and some easements that they're looking from the city to get those as well. And I don't know if Shane has a brief overview of that to share, but it's one of the steps we have to go through in order to get them finalized and get them in and out.
Metro Water is a type of special district that has some statutory rights, and one of those rights is the right to use cities roadways without really saying, "Mother, may I?" They have come to us, however, and we're putting this agreement in place. We're I think very close to having it in final form. We don't have the leverage that we would normally like to have because of their statutory rights, but we've done what we can. They're giving us an indemnification for themselves and their contractors on anything that goes wrong on their project. One thing that Matt alluded to is that they will be coming in and affecting private property, and that's because they have in many cases already an easement across those properties. So in other cases, they'll need to get an easement, but anyway, there's a possibility that some citizens could be kind of little unhappy about what they may view as a high-handed way of somebody coming in and using their property. But again, that's going to be because there's an easement right in place that gives them that right. We don't have a dog in that particular fight. That's between Metro Water and the residents that are affected. So that's the agreement. I expect that would be coming to you for approval probably next meeting. It would be ready.
May I ask the question? You mentioned sleds.
Mhm.
So has the DRC met to look at you mentioned that you reviewed it.
Yeah, they've been meeting since like October of last year on various stages of the engineering design for the pipeline. So yeah, pretty substantial work has been done over the past year.
So what part of the ordinance would they be? Because they can't build habitable structures, right? But I didn't think a water line would be considered.
Yeah, so there are some lines that say habitable structures and critical infrastructure may not run through active landslide areas, may not disturb 30% slopes, and may not cross fault lines. This would be considered critical infrastructure. And this is even using the previous sleds. This wouldn't change based on which version, but they started the process before we adopted the updates, so they're vested under that ordinance. But the existing pipeline also crosses all of these hazards.
Yeah, that's what.
So this is just work along the existing alignment. Part of their rationale, and it's fair, is there are only so many places they can put this pipeline. There are some places where they can move the alignment one way or the other, but it still impacts these hazard areas. So they really didn't see another option than to apply for the variance request.
Doing that. Okay.
So that's generally where we are this spring and this summer and into the fall. You're gonna be seeing a lot of construction going on. There'll be a lot of road closures. So all the notifications will be going out through them. We'll make sure those are followed. But as Shane did allude to, the Mother May I theory is good. And Metro has been very good about keeping us in the loop and talking to us and making sure we're up to snuff with what's happening. But they do have certain rights that go along with that, and we'll be working within those rights. And they've been a pretty decent partner so far. So I don't anticipate any problems. Just know that your constituents will run into these problems, and it's gonna be a mess for a little while. And we're gonna make sure we get notifications. They're working with their information officer along with ours. We're gonna start getting things out on the website, on the notifications, all of these things, and we'll bring in milestone updates to the council as we go along.
Do you have any idea of a start date?
They have to cross Wasatch. That's their phase one. They have to be across Wasatch. I think by July, I want to guess.
What is their website?
I don't know their website name.
Because, you know, this is mostly gonna affect my constituents in District 4. I'd like to be able to advise them of where they can go as they look ahead through this calendar year or sort of coming right down the pike. Is there a way, is there a place, a link?
They have one. We've posted it on our website a few times and it might still be there. But it's the Metropolitan Water District. We'll find information and we'll get it posted again. We'll get it out there.
And they'll have a project, they have a project manager.
They have a project manager and an information officer that all the questions, if you start getting those questions, direct them to the information officer because
And we'll get that information.
we'll have that out as well. And we posted it a couple of times, but we'll get it, as it gets closer, we'll keep it fresh in everybody's memories and minds. We'll push it out a little bit more.
So
Okay?
you said it's gonna come down Fort Union to their aqueduct, but we don't remember exactly where that is.
If I had the picture up, I forget the name of the road.
Give me an idea.
Come over to my street and we look out on the aquifer. So the
Pull up
aquifer,
Google Earth or something.
yeah, because it's
Yeah, and there's two
it's on the
lines.
plateau just north of
You
the
just can't
old
remember
water
the name
treatment
off Fort
plant.
Union.
Well, coming down Fort Union though, isn't gonna be,
No, it'll go underneath, so it'll go, I think, Nut Tree and it'll,
There you go. It's going.
and then it'll end up farther south and slightly, I
There.
think, to the
Yeah,
west.
through the water tank property and that, but it goes down to New Tree on Fort Union.
And then also some of
And
Danish.
then goes down from there, it heads towards the treatment plant on the south end of Danish.
okay.
That's the general alignment, if you will,
Yeah,
takes
I
that
think-
route.
Goes there.
Yeah, there's New Tree right there.
And what actual,
If you
east is
pull
that?
out, zoom out, and we can and push up. Go farther, you need to
Oh,
go farther
this way.
south.
so that's gonna be around,
Yeah, this is the
35
treatment
feet.
plant here, and then the big treatment plant is way down.
Yeah, down off Danish.
This is Danish Road, it's. comes
And
down
the
through here.
big pipe is between Danish and the subdivisions above, right?
The big pipe will come off Fort Union down New Tree and then through. It'll pass the water tank just above the cemetery and then it'll keep going
The
down
new aquifer is up in here.
Mhm.
to the treatment plant.
and New Tree looks like it's around 30 something east, is that right?
close.
No, it's 34, 30th east is,
Two, right, between Bengal
Yeah, it's further east.
and Creek and Bengal.
3,400
This,
east.
this is 3,000 east right here, and New Tree is over here.
Okay,
Like really just having that website at the ready when
They will.
constituents call, that would be awesome.
We'll have it, like I said, as we get
Fire.
closer and closer to the project start date. It's better to have it out there fresh in front of their minds.
Yeah.
The people that are being affected, I mean, not the traveling public, but the personal properties. They've been in negotiations for over a year
Yeah.
on these, so they're well aware of those impacts, but.
Okay.
We will have all that you need so that you can hand it out.
sounds like it might be fall, cause. if
Yeah,
they're
they
not-
have to wrap up by fall. Yeah, they have to be off of Fort Union by October. I think the end of October is the date we've given them.
Okay. Great, any other questions? Thank you, Matt,
You bet.
Shane and Mike.
I'd like to thank my support. for that presentation.
Okay, item D, under staff reports is listed as police and public works fleet funding. So let me have Tim give some background on this and then I know we'll have Chief and Scott add in as well, but yeah, Tim, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I put information in a memo that I share about every 2 years. We go through this lease process and bonding process every 2 years for the lease of our police and public works vehicles. We've done this for a number of years. We did it for quite a few years with just the police vehicles. And then as you recall, 2 years ago, we added the public works vehicles because it made sense financially to do that. And so I've outlined certain things. Let me just hit a few things and I can turn the time over to Scott and Chief Russo on this, but from a procurement perspective, we go through, Ken Garf Automotive, they're under the state contracts. We meet the procurement process standards with that. We've looked at over the years, a number of different lease options from 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But the key with this is the buyback. There's a guaranteed buyback that Ken Garf provides with this. And the 2 years, when we do the 2 year, there's all of the elements of the warranties in place and things such as that. So the buyback is much higher. And so the 2 year lease is really what is workable for them and for us. Correct me if I'm wrong with any of this.
There was a year where we almost got as much as we paid, right?
Where we went,
The buyback was almost as much as we paid.
yeah, I mean, the last round, we got the used car, the car's
Yeah.
worth a lot more
Yeah.
than the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then we've outlined the number of vehicles. The numbers have increased this year because we added 3 new officers. So that is increasing the costs related to this. We've outlined all the vehicles that we're going to be going through the lease with. There's 51 total vehicles. That includes police and fire. And then we've looked at
police and public works.
police and public works.
Like,
not
Riley, you're
fire.
getting new
We get
vehicles.
trucks.
Yeah, sorry.
I wasn't gonna say anything. I was gonna let that ride.
It would have been impacted during the bond process. We've also looked at, over the years, sustainability options, and actually, this is the first year that the buyback makes sense with sustainability with a hybrid vehicle. So most of these vehicles for the first time will be a hybrid vehicle, especially with the police and pickup trucks as well as public works pickups. So the good thing with that is we will have, we get better mileage on this and reduce costs when it comes to gas as well. But with the increased interest rates, with the increased number of vehicles and also the inflationary cost of these vehicles, it's a significant increase this year. I'm being upfront with you. It's about little over 235,000 that we're gonna have to bond more than we have in the past because of those 3 main issues. And so we have to pre-order the vehicles. We're gonna be bringing forward the bond documents. We're gonna be trying to get the best interest rate that we can with this. And Scott and Chief, if you want to add to what I've said, that's kind of my intro into this. And Chief, you can talk about this process because you've been through it for a number of years.
yeah, we've been through this, this is our 8th time through the process. The question comes up sometimes, why don't you go to a 3-year lease? And so I'll head off that question. The reason we don't do that is, the cars are going all the time and we run into mileage problems. We don't have a city shop here like bigger entities do. So if you run into a problem, you can just send it to your city shop and they can fix it. All we do on these vehicles are tires, brakes, oil changes, those kind of simple maintenance things that are built into our program. At 2 years, we still get to 32,000 miles. The warranty goes to 36. Ken Garf wants them back with 30, no more than 32 or 34, because they want to be able to resell that vehicle at, as a vehicle still under manufacturer's warranty. It makes it an easy flip for them.
Yeah.
So, and I understand their perspective on it. Ken Garf has been, first of all, they are on the city contract and they're a Utah company, so we like doing business with them. They can provide us any cars we choose and they've got the process down. There's a lot to organize in this because we have to take in the old vehicles, strip them, move the equipment into the new vehicles, and marker those and then get those cars back to Ken Garf. It's a long process. It doesn't take a week or two, it takes several months. In the past, when we've had problems with vehicles, we've had engines go out, transmissions go out, all kinds of things happen to those cars and trucks. And they're just under warranty. We just simply take them down to the dealer and the city has incurred no cost. So the program works. The alternative is that, I've watched us buy Crown Victorias back to the day and spend a lot of money on them and their maintenance issues. And then by the end of the day, you sell them to the cab companies for $500. And so you know, that amortized cost, you know, over the years. This is a better deal for us, and to be honest, it's also a recruitment and retention incentive as well. Because we have nice equipment, it's dependable, and people ask, why do you need those trucks? And I'm answering questions that I think I'm trying to anticipate that people ask, because I know as a council, this is the first time any of you have actually been through this process with us. So
I've actually been seeing more and more cities with F-150s for their police cars.
and it makes sense, and not only are the 150s, but then they come with a Lariat package, and people think, well, why? Well, they don't need that. Why are they getting the nicer package? Just get, and the reason again is when we sell those cars back, the buyback is so much higher. Because when they resell those vehicles to the public, they don't want a stripped down model. If you go into a dealership, they want a car that has all the bells and whistles on it, and it's under manufacturer's warranty. So our cost is actually, it's cheaper for us to buy the Lariat package than it is the stripped down package. And then you don't have to deal with the maintenance nightmare that comes with it. The trucks up here, we tried cars at one time. It didn't work on snow days. We'd have to have someone with a truck come pick us up, and we'd have to drive up, especially in District 4. You just couldn't get up those roads. And keep in mind, these guys carry a lot of equipment to pull cars out, rescue equipment for accidents, SWAT equipment, guns, all kinds of things that they have to store in the back of those trucks. So that's why we do it. So with that, again, Tim is right. Even figure, I don't know what the costs are, say what does an average vehicle go up every year? Now, inflation's been crazy, but assume they go up 3 or 4% a year, and that's probably conservative. So you're at 8% over 2 years, and then the cost of the interest rate, the cost of the money went up, and even a couple points makes a crazy difference. And then we bought a couple more cars. So with that said, that is why it looks more expensive. But here's the big sell on the cars. Previous councils have really felt strongly about, can't you go to a green car? Can't you get an electric car? It made no sense to do that because we would have to put charging stations at the officers' homes. It was expensive. The dealer said, no, can't do. We don't want those cars back. We can't resell those cars. Believe it or not. On this case, we are buying the hybrids, and the dealer actually motivated me to buy those cars. You will save money because we will give you a bigger buyback because everybody wants those hybrids because you don't plug them in, and your gas mileage on our trucks are 8 or 9 miles to the gallon around the city. We have one of the hybrids in our fleet now. It's getting 21 miles to the gallon. That's remarkable, right? And we've had 0 issues with it. So with that, I'll turn it over to this or questions.
No, Scott gave us the.
The costs have gone up. The cost of capital has gone up, and Tim had some discussions with some other cities and confirmed that they're seeing the same thing. So a vehicle that you paid, $45,000, $50,000, years ago is now closer to $60,000. Is the reality of it. And these pickup trucks aren't inexpensive. They're not a $20,000 pickup truck. I don't think you can buy a $20,000 pickup truck, anymore and stuff. So the realities of the upfront capital costs are real, you know what I mean? The other thing is that interest rates right now are higher. Our current deal that we're in, it was 2.999, so 3%. If we were to finance today, the rate would be around 4.5%.
Better than I thought.
Yeah, and so with the increased capital costs though, so what we financed last time was 2.7 million, and we're probably gonna be looking at financing somewhere in the range of 3.3 million. There's a few things we're still working out before we get to that. But on that increased upfront capital, you gotta pay interest rate on a higher, increased capital cost. And so all that kind of negatively impacts us, but there's not a lot of other options out there.
Is there the ability to refinance if rates went down, or does this have a prepayment or?
I don't think there's a prepayment issue because I had asked, they actually, in Talking Designs Bank, they actually can get better rates if we finance it longer. So what we'll probably do is do a 5 or a 6 year deal in terms of the finance, but pay it off at the 2 year level that will be equal to the buyback amount.
because we can get a better deal on the 5 to 6 year rate than we can on a 2 year rate.
Oh, got it.
It's kind of crazy, but that's the reality of the rate market right now and what we live in. So we'll just structure it so it'll basically be the same as a 2 year deal with a balloon payment at the end. But based on that, I think we could probably refinance it if we needed to. There would be some fees associated with it, so we need to look at the dynamics of that. But I'll confirm that with Zions as we go forward so that we know what we're dealing with.
So we'll be bringing the bond and all of that back to you in a couple of months. Like I said, we've ordered the vehicles because we have to get them in the queue and get them prepared, and then we'll come back with that agreement. We let you know typically this time of the year, each time we go through a lease, and then sometime around April, May, June is when you'll be considering the bond at that point.
With the.
So that might give us enough time. We might see one, you never know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what the market's doing. It was, a month ago, I would have said we'll probably see rates coming down.
1 or
And
2.
Today I'm going, I don't know if it's gonna come down as much. So it's hard to tell, what's gonna happen, but we won't actually enter into the agreement until about 38 days before we lock, which would put us somewhere in June that we would lock into it. And stuff, and we'll bring you all that details when it gets a little bit closer, as well as some more firm numbers in terms of the interest rate.
Okay, we didn't see sales tax numbers today, did we?
No,
We haven't.
I didn't hear anything, so yeah,
We'll let you know as soon as, should be this
week for sure,
Yeah.
but I don't know what day, so.
you'll get it in accounts communication if we get it, so.
Okay, questions from the council?
Hearts are just heavy. There's been an increase in everything
Yeah.
and no one wants to raise taxes.
Yeah.
Got to pay for stuff.
I know,
Mhm.
we're gonna be super popular.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hall, for that, and we'll move forward. So the last item on our agenda is item E under staff reports, and it is listed as the Tavachi proposed annexation to multiple times now. So let's give some, do you want to discuss this first, Tim, and then we'll move to Mike after you give some background?
Yeah, so there were a number of questions that we talked about at the last work session. Shane has done some research and submitted information to you on that research related to the questions on the property coming, or basically with the annexation, having it, what happens if there is the road does not get
Did everyone see
property
the,
taxes? Yeah, did everyone see
did everyone
that?
see the email Tim sent?
Yeah, it was
Go through
excellent,
those
out of the great
attachments.
communication.
Then in addition to that, we've had some other information that was sent just today from Carrie Wynn, who's representing the Davachi annexation petition. So that information was provided to you, and we agreed to have additional discussion as well related to these things. And so that's where we're at. So that's my intro.
So, Mike.
I have nothing further,
That's
so
perfect.
my name was just on the agenda.
Okay.
I've got nothing for you.
No, Mike, I'm expecting the PowerPoint. if you got one, so. Well, let's turn the time back over to the council then. Let's deliberate some more. So if we want to reset what we're looking at. So we've been concerned about if the HOA were to for 4 years not pay their taxes and that we've learned that the road could be turned back over to the county. And that the county, what our concern was is could we say, hey, we don't ever want to be able to take that road. And so Shane obviously did a bunch of work on that, and then we read through that, and so it's unfortunately not super black and white. There's some nuance in there, if that's fair to say, Shane, right? And so that there's a couple things I think we could fight it. The one thing that we have to would be make sure of, and Councilmember Burrell and I talked about this off, or a day or so ago, was, and one thing that I wanted to bring up is, like in title, you can request the county to give you an update anytime something changes, when any encumbrance or anything that comes upon, the property. Could we do something similar with the county? If there's any changes to that parcel to give us an update, would that satisfy what I'm trying to get to, your concern about them deeding it to us without our knowledge? Does that make sense?
You're asking me.
Yeah,
I don't know if a third party can ask for a notice on somebody else's property. I would have to look at that.
oh yeah,
So
we
you
would
can
be
do
a
that for
third
your
party, you're right,
property.
yeah.
But yeah, what that would do is then give us actual notice, and hopefully somebody would do something about it at the time, realize that there's this 90-day deadline to do something about it.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
thank you, and
Councilmember.
I appreciate all the thoughtful deliberation, and so I do have comments regarding the entirety of the annexation, which is made up, of course, of two relatively equal in size parcels, the Tavachi and then the Walker Family Trust. The same organization that owns the gravel pit also owns the acreage on the north side of Tavachi, which kind of appeared without notice, at least to me, in the meeting this fall, where we learned that that property was going to also be proposed to be annexed in, not just the Tavachi housing area. But let's keep talking about Tavachi here for a minute. So a concern I had in reading through this wonderful brief that our city attorney has given us, and I just quote, concerns have been raised that the city could involuntarily become the owner of a private infrastructure within Tavachi, such as the roadways and access bridge, which presumably are currently owned in fee either by the HOA or by the Tavachi developer. And then it goes on. And so the question I would have is, can we identify with certainty, who is the owner of that roadway currently? Is it the original developer or is it the Tavachi HOA?
yes, we would be able to determine who the current fee owner of the property is. That would I typically rely on a title company to do that for me, but I think our staff is probably also capable of looking that up. I don't know if they have done that or not, but
It's
the HOA.
Tavachi at Big Cottonwood Canyon Owners Association, Inc.
Shows up as in a title.
That's just on the parcel. The parcel record shows that is the ownership of the roadway.
that raises an interesting issue that the homeowners association may already have thought of, though. They have two entities that have the same name. The first one is dead, though.
I'm sorry,
The first one expired. And so the one that they have just formed within the last few weeks has the same name. It's a new entity, but to me, an interesting issue is what happens to fee title to that the old entity had to this infrastructure. It seems to me that the safest approach would be for the old entity, as part of its winding up, which is it's entitled to do, to actually deed that over to the new entity. Because legally, the old entity and the new entity, they have the same name, but they're different people. They're
Well,
different legal people.
to your point, when I was reading the details on the, let's see, it was within the February 8th, 2024 filing with the, let me just find it. So with the Utah Department of Commerce, within their notification to us or their statement, it indicates that they were not dissolved. At least as I understand this sentence, it says, the division also certifies that this entity has paid all fees, penalties owed to this state. My most recent annual report has been filed by the division, and the articles of dissolution have not been filed. So apparently the HOA was not dissolved.
Well, I believe that by statute, my understanding of corporate law is that it was administratively dissolved. So articles of dissolution may not have been filed, but administratively, by statute, I believe the dissolution occurred if they didn't bring their entity up to date within 2 years after it first went down, which I think that time passed in December of 2023. So anyway,
So how
that's,
can we get to the bottom of that? Because it says here that at least the state says that they recognize that this entity can transact business and was duly registered under the laws of the state of Utah.
as I said in my memo, I don't think the HOA matters in the annexation process. My understanding is that either the HOA didn't sign the annexation petition, or if they did, the amount of land that they signed for, which that signature would arguably be invalid, wouldn't invalidate the annexation petition. So I think my view is that these things about the HOA are interesting, but they don't affect the annexation.
But isn't it the solvency, the financial viability of the HOA, which is where the funds are all held, that they say, we're carrying all this insurance and, we have $300,000 in our HOA. I mean, the HOA for me seems integral to the stability of this proposition to annex into our city.
That may be of interest to the council under the annexation laws. It does not have any bearing.
But in terms of our financial liability, I guess questions that have been brought forward to me from constituents that I'm going to pass along here is asking for, frankly, more detail on the level and amount of insurance coverage that is being carried, and does that insurance coverage cover earthquakes? I mean, we've been told by the HOA that this bridge and roadway was built to, I don't know what it was, 7.8 or some significant, seismic earthquake level, but verifying their insurance and how much they pay for that, and does the HOA have the funds to continue to carry that insurance? And one last question. Is, in your opinion, as our city attorney, exactly what type of insurance should an HOA with such an unusual road configuration be carrying in order to protect our city, should we choose to annex them in?
Well, I don't think that the HOA that issue is germane to the issue of whether or not to annex under the annexation statutes. The council may determine that there's this risk out here that maybe someday the city ends up with the roadway, and is there going to be enough money there for that not to happen? Or if something happens to the roadway in the meantime, are the people who own it going to be able to fix it so that we don't have citizens of the city coming in and saying, gee, you should come and fix our road because by golly, we're taxpayers here too. So those are ancillary issues that the council can decide to, take into its decision tree on the issue. But as far as compliance with the annexation statutes, I don't think the HOA issues are germane to them.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm kind of switching gears,
And
and
as far
I
as the
think,
amount of money, I don't know. Enough to fix the bridge, adjusted for inflation. Yes, that's not something that I claim any expertise in.
So one of the things that I could add that might be germane is, the email that Tim sent just before council had some attachments, and one of them was the engineering study on the bridge. So one of the residents, before they bought the home, did an engineering study. They wanted to make sure, what they were getting into. And I can give you some background. And I can just read part of it. They said they basically said they performed an extensive structural inspection of the Tavachi Bridge to observe the condition of the concrete and identify any structural deficiencies that may warrant repair. Said the bridge was constructed with abutments, concrete beams, and a concrete deck. The bridge barrier walls are designed to keep vehicles from falling off the bridge as well. He basically included recommendations for maintenance and repairs that needed to be done yearly. He said that it was designed to the AASHTO standards, the newest standards of UDOT for bridges. Said the bridge was built with the same loads and material specs as a bridge along any freeway. He said that the bridge is designed to resist a large magnitude earthquake. Said the bridge has a design life of more than 100 years. Anyway.
That's impressive. For those of us who saw the I-80 bridges go in,
Yeah.
about 1968, I saw them replaced a few years ago. I don't know about
With
that. years.
my son.
So they
We need to get maintenance records to find out if this was continually maintained, because that's critical for that 100-year life.
Yeah, the annual maintenance is approximately $3,500 a year. And it includes surface repair, sealants and inspection. So anyway,
How could
yeah.
it be my car costs more than $3,500 a year.
That's, yeah, I have to throw the red flag too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That replacement cost is 8 million.
Uh,
I do have another question, which I think we discovered. The bridge is already in city boundary.
Portion of it. Well, the bridge,
Portion of the bridge.
actually, the bridge is the road.
The road is not
The
all,
road,
but
a
the
portion of
bridge
it is and a portion of it is not, yeah.
So when we're talking about tax default, do we already have exposure then? I mean, because the biggest cost is obviously the bridge.
Jane, any,
How does that affect
Alright.
this discussion?
Pull that up. It actually looks, this is just the county records. This purple line is the city boundary there. So everything below the purple line is Cottonwood Heights. So you can see that the bridge portion in that first kind of curve there. But when I click on the parcel, the roadway is not its own parcel. That it looks like it, I suspect it's an easement over the power company's parcel. For the portion that's within the city limits. And then when you get outside into the unincorporated portion, you can see here, the roadway is its own parcel.
So that's all surface grade in the county
Um,
right now, and
That's a good question. I don't know what it looks like around this curve. Everything up here is. But it's not its own parcel within city limits. It's part of the power company land, according to this map.
Hey, Chief, could I ask this question of you? When this first came, we had to vote to allow the Tavachi development to petition for an annexation. I originally said, I'll vote for them to make their case, but I don't think this is something I would support. The comments about public safety was the one thing that really tipped the scale for me. And I just want to make sure if I'm going into this and I'm making a decision that I'm thinking about it accurately. I was appalled at the idea that if someone was up there breaking into a home and it was my family, it's their family, but I should think of it as if it's my family. And I call 911. And there's someone that's wanting to do harm to me and my family. Cottonwood Heights City today does not go up there. So you call who and how long does it take? Because some of the comments that were made were, I don't know what it was. I don't want to quote exactly, half an hour,
40 minutes.
40 minutes. And for me, I think that that's insane. And for someone to be in a position, just because we have these little pockets that are out there as cities have grown and we've gotten rid of and changed the form of policing, that now it's, well, tough, even though they had nothing to do with that decision, tough luck. That's just how it is. You don't get appropriate public safety. And for me, if something happens up there, it's in the news, someone something terrible happens, I'm not gonna say, well, God darn, I'm sure happy that we didn't annex them in because, you know, maybe we'd have to take care of some of these other issues. For me, having them have real legitimate public safety within minutes was enough for me to say, I think that they should be part of the city. And now, if that's inaccurate, let me know, but that's what really swayed me.
Well, 100%, you're right on. It's, ethically, I mean, the same issue holds true with a couple of these pockets, you know, that we can annex, so they can still get fire because they send the nearest apparatus, but like, there are some small areas that were our city that aren't gonna get the protection from the police, don't get the protection from the police. But they're talking about Travasi now the dynamic is gonna change. It's bad now. But when they separate from UPD, keep in mind, Sheriff Rivera has control over UPD now. Those are her resources. They work for her. And so if you do not have a Canyon car on, a sheriff's car, she can certainly exercise her power and send Mill Creek or holiday cars up there or Midvale cars up there to handle the call. In a few months, that's not going to exist. They're going to completely separate, and it's not going to be a pleasant divorce. It's going to, someone's running up the credit card and taking the dog on this one. And those resources are not going to be there. So if you get a call at Travasi, it's the sheriff's sole responsibility to handle that. It is unincorporated. So if the Canyon cars are on, great. If not, where are those sheriff's cars coming from? White City, half the time they don't have a car on. So it's Kearns Magna.
Yeah, Magna.
Yeah, that's where the cars are coming from. Are you kidding me? Who's,
And that is a public safety and giving those people an appropriate level of public safety. And eventually, when the gravel pit closes and that area is developed and there's more activity throughout all those canyons, and there's this little pocket that says, good luck, call Kearns. I just think that's unreasonable.
Well, I think that for Cottonwood Heights, the city of Cottonwood Heights, to have to remedy the problems of Salt Lake County is very unreasonable. I mean, I am not unsympathetic to those residents, but I don't see it as the responsibility of the city of Cottonwood Heights. If Salt Lake County, and this is actually, I was in a meeting with Rosie Rivera just the other day, and she got into a high level of detail. And as I've learned about, that this is a state legislature issue. If the state legislature has imposed an untenable situation on Salt Lake County related to UPD separating from the sheriff's office, this is a problem that the state of Utah created. It belongs to them. It does not belong to the citizens.
To fix that?
So it is not my responsibility to fix something for a neighborhood that was built. They annexed the developer, as you know, deliberately annexed out in order to not have to follow our guidelines. And now to say that suddenly we need to take on problems that we refused to take on, whatever that was, 17 years ago. And now to say, oh, well, Cottonwood Heights now is responsible for the well-being of citizens who bought in, they knew what they were buying into. And one of the things that we haven't really talked about in great enough deliberation to satisfy my constituents is that we talk about road maintenance as if roughly 100 people or more that are going to be living up there once that's completely built out. Now, once it's annexed into the city, and there is a problem that we may not even be able to conceive of right now. You know, we talk about sprinkler systems in their houses to help fire suppression. That's great. But a catastrophic fire coming off the hillside, something that we have not been able to register, you know, that might happen in or around that roadway, that you now have 100 people trapped up there. And you now, and I know the mayor and I talked about this, you know, at length, and he mentioned that, well, if in a real catastrophe, you know, the federal government would likely step in and help us. So I'm not saying that we might suddenly be on the hook for, you know, $1 billion. I'm sure the feds would come in and help us. But the thing is, we're never going to sit here and go, oh, those people up there on the hill. We're going to go, there's 100 people trapped up there. There's only one way to get in and out. And guess what? Now we are caught holding the bag. It's totally up to our city. And that's where I'm really having trouble supporting this annexation with the information I currently have, because I think it holds our taxpayers to a level of liability that is just unfair.
So let me, I agree with, I think there's some good points that everybody's made. I think there's pros and cons. One other aspect that I think that we're maybe not evaluating completely. You know, we currently take care of every road for every resident, you know, that lives in our city unless they live on a private lane. So I mean, the fact that they would come in now, they would be, we've already been told that police and fire didn't need any extra resources. So they would actually come in and cost us less than the street that I live on. Because my street has to be maintained and repaired. Tabaqui, you know, is currently under, you know, the HOA's requirement to do that. They obviously have, I mean, $300,000 would probably redo their roads for, you know, so anyway. Lots of issues. Any,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
To your point,
Mhm.
isn't everyone in the canyon under those same conditions with this UPD sheriff split? I mean, anybody who's up in the canyon has. that
well,
same
Brighton's
issue.
a city. So they
They
have,
don't
there's-
police,
they-
though.
But a lot of these areas are starting, that's why you're seeing these incorporations. That's why it's the evolution of what's happened along the Wasatch Front. And why you see these areas that are annexing, they're happening every day over in Sandy, all these other areas, they're adding in these parts of these communities, so there's not these little pockets out there. And when you're talking about going all the way up the canyon, it's a little bit different of a story than, I mean, you look at the map, it's right around kitty corner to 7-Eleven.
No, I understand that. I kind of came into this because I've been attending council meetings since last July. And I really thought unless there was a black and white, that we would never have the responsibility for the road. That would be ideal. I'm really concerned about taking on the liability still, because you can spread that liability across a lot of people in the county. And just you know, 33,000 of us in the city. And, you know, I just can't look my taxpayers in the eye and go, sorry, someday you might have to be on the hook for this.
Yeah,
I don't
and
wanna be on the
I know
board.
that this area used to be part of Cottonwood Heights, and I guess the developer, you all know the history better than I
Yeah.
do. So the developer moved out, and then, you know, they're wanting to annex in. I
And
mean, I
most
guess
of the
you
people
could
bought
fall.
when they
No,
were
it was
county,
the,
not
it was the
city.
developer who.
It was
that
the developer.
drive for annex.
So the people who bought the lots knew they were in the county. And one of the things that we've discovered is, you know, they're trying to make their best case. The reason they want to be in the city is they want to have some say in what's happening with the gravel pit. Who can blame them for that?
Sure,
But
I don't doubt that.
again, you know, we look at motives, we think of you know, what's really driving this. I think that's a big driver that's been unspoken and needs to be.
Yeah,
spoken.
no, I've thought about that a ton.
so I've wondered if that's a negative. And I mean, I understand.
I mean, they can come and say, as a citizen, as compared to as someone who's a citizen, resident, compared to someone that's
Versus a-
outside of
yeah.
the county. And I just thought, you know, I think all of us here probably make holistic decisions for the city. And we don't make, at least I wouldn't make a decision for my district based off of a very small population. But everyone, I don't know,
Well-
it's tough to say. They were once in the city. I don't know what happened, why the heck they wanted to leave, but
It was
a lot of
ugly.
these people that
For
are
those
still
who are here, it was ugly.
buying
A
in.
lot of,
It was driven by the development. In
It
order
was.
to be able to develop that land.
Yeah.
It was necessary to annex out to be able to develop that land. So let's just be clear that it's
Essentially
not,
shouldn't
we don't, we
exist.
have no idea why it happened.
So
But let's
it
also-
would not have been allowed to be developed at all before? Is
No,
that-
that's not the case.
It was platted and then it de-annexed. They were seeking higher density zoning.
But they didn't do it.
I think it went through the process and got
They
denied.
thought they
by
were gonna
the
get
county
higher
council.
So
density. and
it's
they
the same
didn't.
as it probably would have been.
Yes.
And then, yeah, I think it sat undeveloped for a number of years and now it's switched ownership.
Let's also visit something that we now have clarification on. There is it's somewhat analogous to the situation going on in Timberline Drive there in District 4, where the owners that live along that cul-de-sac are wanting the city to take on their roadway, even though it is considered, you know, their obligation to maintain their roadway. And so as it's written in this brief from our attorney, as previously discussed, failure by a realty owner to pay property taxes for 4 consecutive years. I was under the impression it was 8 years, but after only 4 consecutive years of not paying the property taxes on a roadway, it results in the property going to a public tax sale with the host county involuntarily becoming the owner in the absence of any other bids.
So
So-
what we've learned from that though, is that the owners of the homes, just like on Timberline, are still responsible for the maintenance of that road.
Well, if they,
With-
but if the
with the
HOA, if the HOA.
The
were
HOA
not-
goes away, just like what happened, that's what happened to them. They had an HOA that went away
Okay,
and they're responsible for the
so
maintenance of that road.
if the owner, so if the HOA defaults and or the owners default after 4 consecutive years,
The
it
owners
is
are
owned
still,
by-
like,
and of
responsible.
course Salt Lake County asked Cottonwood Heights to accept the ownership of Timberline Drive. That occurred, I believe, in 2011. Anyways, Cottonwood Heights at that time made the decision, a policy decision, to go ahead and accept Timberline as a city-owned road. And I will tell you, I am getting regular calls from the residents that live on that road. They feel that it's unfair. They're, they are still waiting for a definitive word on whether we're going to pay for the costs of not only maintaining it, but repairing it on some kind of schedule. So what I guess I'm getting to is another thing we haven't discussed is if Tabachi stays with the county, they would have to, in order to have a council majority accept any responsibility for that roadway, they'd have to convince 5 elected representatives. If they annex into the city of Cottonwood Heights, they would only need to convince 3 of us to change our policy and start taking care of their roadway. Knowing those dynamics, I think it's something we should give some thought to. I'm not, I like Council Member Highland. I think it's important that we are sympathetic, that we are empathetic, but we also have to look for motives. Why is it happening now? I just was over there,
I think every family probably has a different reason, is my guess. I mean, that mom that talked about public safety might be her reason, another home might be a different reason. I think it's hard to put them all under one bucket. And I do think that if there was a massive, area of development that we were looking at that just went on for miles, I think that the argument of, where do we end and what about the people up further east? I think this is a very limited pocket. And if we can help provide legitimate public safety without having it be a massive cost to the city, that's how I'm thinking of it. And I don't know of many of those pockets in our area that fall under that same purview, and maybe there's a couple other ones. And if there are, maybe they should come to our city as well. But
well, you segued actually perfectly onto the subject, Mayor, unless we've run out of time.
We're close, unfortunately.
Well,
We're
we haven't
noticed to
touched-
start our next meeting.
Okay,
at
but we
5:30.
haven't touched on the additional parcel of roughly 50 acres beyond Tabachi that is owned by the Walker Family Trust. How did that come to be part of the annexation request? And would they be expecting to utilize the existing road to access any building development that might go on there? Because even though we've been told, well, sleds, our sensitive lands probably wouldn't allow much development on that 50 acres. So when you say it's just this little pocket, well, it's not really just this little pocket. It's the 43 lots that are there,
is it
plus an
developable?
additional, and maybe habitable, no, but I know at one off the cuff conversation several years ago with the owner, he said to me, oh, gosh, it's going to be great there above the gravel pit. It can be office building, Class A office space, and quite a mix. And I'm really enthusiastic about developing it. So I think there's a lot more due diligence that we need to do and think about as a council related to this total annexation
so
project.
what are your,
It's hard to say without having usually we analyze that when a development plan comes in. Just from being up there, this is the end of what used to be Gun Club Road down here. That's where the old gun club was located. It does get a lot steeper as you move to the east. I don't know what the exact grade of this is. If it's 30% or greater, then it is by code unbuildable. And I know a lot of it is. I just don't know where that slope ends and where it starts flattening out.
Yeah, it's pretty steep up there.
But it is steep.
I don't think anyone
And
wants to see that.
the current zoning would just be,
Well, that would be part of the process. If the annexation was approved, then we would have to assign a zoning. Right now, Tavachi's in like a half acre forestry zone, which we have a version of. we'd probably look at the county zoning map for that 50-acre
Does
parcel.
it all have to be one zone or can it be separate? That's
No, that's
stuff
a legislative.
that's super, super steep. You
Yeah.
could zone it differently.
You could.
Before we
But
do
what
this,
we would normally do
will
on
there
that,
be responsibility for that road? Is that what you just said?
Uh,
Based on the
well,
deadline?
so what we found out from Timberline is that, you know, unless the council makes a decision to maintain it, and you know, that's right, but the council that's gonna maintain it could annex them in any time later anyway. So I mean, so yeah, so the council would have to agree to it. As far as, the county deeding it to us without us knowing, and you know, there's,
They can't do that.
yeah.
Like a moral
I'm not
hazard.
super
I mean, what
concerned
we were
about
talking
that.
About that it just all of a sudden gets dropped in her lap, and it's, I couldn't believe by statute that we could, that there would be that kind of moral hazard that would
Yeah.
actually be on the books.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mayor, I mean, there's a lot that needs to still be discussed with this. We can definitely have it on another work session.
Yeah, we're not in a hurry. Like I said, we're not gonna, so let's, I think we've got more to talk about. So we'll bring it back
I just.
and,
One thing happened.
and then we'll move to, item 4, which is the review of calendars. And let me just go over these real quick. And East Jordan Canal Trail Feasibility Study Open House Wednesday, February 21st at the City Hall Cullimore Community Room. The Youth Council, Youth City Council Dinner with the Mayor and the City Council Tuesday, February 27th, at 6 p.m. here. The Citizens Police Academy begins Wednesday, February 28th. We're excited about at 6 p.m. That's also here. The Sweetheart Paint Night, Friday, March 1st, starting at 6:30. Here at the Cullimore Community Room. Beauty and the Beast musical editions. Friday, February 15th, March 15th rather, and Saturday, March 16th here as well. And then the Easter egg hunt, Saturday, March 30th, beginning at 10 a.m.
The 2 arts council events I'll mention in my report.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, we do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to close our work session and move right into our CDRA meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.